Does this set you up for a collision with Ottawa, with Alberta, with Saskatchewan?
For our part in BC, that includes sucking it up and having a hard conversation about...
What you're about to watch here is quite something. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got a panel, a combination of panels here, CTV and CBC, both interviewing David Eby on the same day. I cut out the best sections from both. David Cochrane sets up the situation here. David Eby super pissed off because Scott Moe, Daniel Smith, and Mark Carney have been secretly talking about a new pipeline up to the BC coast. David Eby wasn't involved. Vassy humiliates David Eby, absolutely destroys his position so badly, he's absolutely gobsmacked. He does not know what to say. Let's jump into this.
Well, it's pretty clear from sources and public comments that the federal government and Alberta are getting closer to a deal that could include a path towards an oil pipeline to the northwest BC coast. And Saskatchewan says it's also been part of these talks.
We've been part of those discussions and very supportive of Alberta's position. When it comes to that piece of infrastructure, very supportive of them being a proponent at these early stages, and highly confident that as we balance the regulatory environment, that you'll see the private sector move very quickly.
What do you make of this news that Saskatchewan has been part of these conversations with Alberta and Ottawa?
Yeah, look, I mean, Alberta's put $20 million into a communications office, and that buys a lot of MOUs and announcements, but it still hasn't landed a company interested in funding this, nor have I seen any indication, and frankly, nor should I, of the federal government putting up the $50 billion to build a second publicly owned pipeline, especially when we already have one that's not at capacity. But I mean, I do have...
Dude, we're not doing this again. I've brought this up so many times. That pipeline is like 75, 80% capacity right now. It's going to be at capacity before a shovel even goes in the ground, and he knows that. I don't know why this guy hates our country so much. Like, he doesn't want prosperity. Does he have shares in Blackstone, and that's what he's trying to pump up here? This guy's a greedy shrew. He should be thrown out of office for being a poopy pants loser. Just listen to this. He doesn't like that Scott Moe was talking with Daniel Smith and the Liberal government trying to work this through. And why would Scott? David Eby doesn't have Alberta and Saskatchewan's best interest at heart.
I have to say, I almost fell out of my seat when I heard Scott Moe say that he was part of these conversations and was helping in these discussions, which I was completely unaware of, between Alberta, Saskatchewan, and the federal government about what happens in British Columbia. Especially surprised because there's a lot we should be doing with Saskatchewan. You know, Nutrien, one of their big potash producers, just announced that they want to ship potash out of Washington state, which puts them at the whims of Donald Trump. He and I should be working together to make sure that potash moves out of West Coast ports in Canada to protect Saskatchewan residents and Canadians.
We've got this one here. This is another failure on Canada's part, a condemnation of our regulatory environment and our inability to permit port infrastructure the private sector actually wants to pay for. This is coming from Nutrien. This company here rules out Canada for a new potash export terminal, chooses U.S. instead. Another failure.
And instead, he's having secret conversations with Danielle Smith and allegedly the Prime Minister about what's happening in British Columbia.
Well, look at this loser. He's so pissed off about this. Nobody likes David Eby. He acts like a toddler. This guy's an activist lawyer who took John Horgan's $6 billion surplus and turned it into $11 billion deficit. Strictly based on that alone, he should be thrown out of office for being an absolute failure. Yeah, and Nutrien, they want to ship out of America because business in Canada sucks. This is up to Mark Carney and, well, David Eby. They made a business case for them to do it out of British Columbia, then they would have done it. So you have only yourself to blame, Eby.
You know, Premier, I was also surprised to hear from Scott Moe that he was part of this, but I am also not the Premier of British Columbia and you know, the leader of the province that this pipeline would ultimately go through. So do you think BC should be part of these conversations, given that it involves quite significantly going through the territory you lead?
I mean, I think you can make a strong argument, David, that British Columbia should be involved in these conversations. I mean,
no, you can't phrase it like that. If we're going to do British Columbians, then put it to a referendum and we'll vote this through. This loser activist has a different agenda for himself that he's potentially enriching himself off of, because everything he's doing is not in Canada, British Columbians' best interest. A pipeline going through there would benefit all of Canada.
And I feel like I'm watching a couple tourists wearing sandals wander into the woods on the north shore of Vancouver, saying, don't worry about us, we know where we're going. You know, they're going to have to be rescued by a helicopter, and guess who has to send the helicopter? But the other piece that is and has been very frustrating for me is that we have 4 times more major projects on the board than any other province in Canada, and the vast majority of those projects rely on the support of the coastal First Nations, for whom the
Yeah, and if you saw my previous video, the coastal First Nations are pissed off about the KSI Lissom's LNG project because it's funded by Blackstone, an American company, funding Western LNG, a company out of Houston, enriching one of Donald Trump's big campaign donors. They don't like that. This is going to be built over in South Korea, floated over to Canada. This is not a Canadian project. They should do it, pay their taxes to Canada, but they shouldn't be getting grants. And said this guy's trying to sell us that First Nations absolutely love this. They don't. Clearly they don't, because they're protesting on the side of the road there as Carney drove out, and they weren't allowed to go to his press conference. That tells you everything you need to know. This guy's a liar and a snake, just like Carney.
oil tanker ban is the sole reason why they're able to tolerate those other projects. So this is a broadside attack on an oil tanker ban that is the foundation of economic growth mapped out for the entire country for the foreseeable future. And it just makes no sense to me that that we're not at the table being able to make that case and to have that conversation and be blunt, but also to bring forward constructive opportunities like potash with Saskatchewan, like talking with Alberta about the existing publicly owned pipeline that we have that's not at capacity and could be expanded. You know, we're not seeking to be obstructionists here. We're just trying to find a path to deliver for Canadians the jobs and prosperity that we can in the short term, medium term, and ultimately the long term as we stand on our own 2 feet as a country.
Right. No.
If that was the way to do it, then bring forward a plan to add another line that goes up TMX. But when it comes down to it, this guy just said that a tanker ban is essential for Canada's prosperity. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Who has the most money on planet Earth? Which countries? It's the ones with oil. Saudi Arabia, stinking rich because of oil. Look at America now. They become an oil giant because of fracking. And Canada could be that if we got rid of the tanker ban and the 9 bad laws and pulled some oil out of the ground, then we could start building out other stuff. Really pump up our nuclear services, small modular reactors, export those around the world. We're not going to export our clean electricity over to Asia. And here's David Eby on CTV, Vassy interviewing him, throwing another tantrum over here.
They don't know what they're talking about. And not only that, there's not a real project here. And the threat to the projects that I told you about, those 10,000 plus jobs, the largest private sector investment in Canadian history that is reaching final investment decision, the threat to those projects is the coastal First Nations saying, if you lift the tanker ban, we will no longer support these projects. We don't even like them in the first place, and the only reason we're tolerating them is because of the tanker ban.
Why would we tolerate this, period? We're talking a couple thousand people deciding whether Canada makes billions of dollars. We should make a rule. They say no, then they never get another dollar again. The entire region, anyone who's against it, not a dollar. Pull the project out, build it somewhere else, no more reconciliation. You can't have it both ways.
And I don't know that anyone appears to get this from Alberta or Saskatchewan, or disappointingly, the PMO, if in fact these conversations are happening in the total absence of the coastal First Nations. They haven't been included either.
The coastal First Nations were banned from Mark Carney's press conference talking about this. Let's get real here, man. This is a crap show. Well, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but somebody's making some money here. Somebody is profiting big from this, and it's not Canadians.
But let's sit down at the table and figure out a path forward. But instead of that, all we get is a $20 million PR exercise from a premier who's in political trouble, trying to remove an oil tanker ban off the coast of our province that is the foundation for more than 10,000 jobs and billions of dollars in economic activity for our province and for the entire country.
Yeah, for the entire country. Let's put a tanker ban in. That's good for the country. Vassy's not buying it. This guy is unbelievable. These unhinged rants on both stations here. Ooh, Vassy gets him real good here. She asked the number one question that should be asked.
Why is it okay for your province to profit from its natural resources and not for Alberta?
You know, I think, I mean, Vassy, with respect to the question, the idea that Alberta has been frustrated in realizing access to market is bizarre. $30 billion in taxpayer dollars went to building the first pipeline that is now publicly owned, that's not even at full capacity and could be significantly expanded. And that's not enough for Alberta. You know, Alberta also wants billions of dollars for the Pathways plan project.
No, that's Mark Carney's project. Alberta doesn't need that, and Alberta doesn't want that. This guy's got, I believe, like 4 major projects on Mark Carney's list. Alberta gets 0, and he has the audacity to say this? I'm a British Columbian, but this is ridiculous, dude. Alberta's getting the short stick, and the Pathways project is being forced on them because of Mark Carney's net zero agenda. We've got losers among losers running the country and the provinces here.
To reduce carbon emissions, and why not $50 billion more for a second taxpayer-owned pipeline, because there is no private company that is willing to do that. And the entitlement the belief that only Alberta should have access to that kind of money from the federal government and that kind of support and that kind of hand-holding. It is an entitlement that cannot continue. Alberta...
She's trying to hold it together. Look at, she's like, dude, what are you talking about? The entitlement's coming from David Eby. Alberta has 0 projects on the major projects list. The Pathways project is a dream. It's one of these maybe happen projects, and it's only for Mark Carney to make money off of.
Just like every other province and territory in this country, we all have to work together. For our part in BC, that includes sucking it up and having a hard conversation about the TMX pipeline that's already publicly owned, that we fought tooth and nail, but we're willing to sit at the table with Alberta about. But the idea that BC has to take our private sector projects and put them at risk for nothing from Alberta. They have no project.
We are not a different country, EB. This is a confederation, dude. Wake the heck up, man.
No proponent, no route, no permits, no nothing. And we have to put all of our hard work that has been done over years.
So Vassy's just waiting to school him again. She's doing a good job here.
But the difference is geography, right? Like your province is the coast. And that necessitates, if you are trying to export resources, involvement of British Columbia. And when you say, why is, you're intimating that essentially Alberta wants too much, that they are entitled by asking for additional pipeline export capacity. Would you be okay with just one LNG project, Premier? If someone said, no, you should just stop at LNG 1?
I'm trying to imagine.
She got him. He's got nothing. Look at her face. Check me, loser.
Scenario where British Columbia and the federal government are having private meetings about Alberta and Saskatchewan.
Oh, here he goes. He's going to poopy pants again. She totally got him. That's such a great example. No more LNG phase 2. Just, you're only allowed to have one. He has absolutely nothing there. You see, he was absolutely speechless. The guy didn't know what to say.
In the absence of those provinces, I'm trying to imagine what the reaction would be. I understand. We need to have conversations. I understand the need for Premier Smith to advocate for her province.
Look at this guy, defeated. You can see him slumping over his posture. He knows he just got wrecked.
And that's fine. But what I am saying, and I'm not sure I can be any clearer about it, is her advocacy around the oil tanker ban puts at risk real projects with private sector proponents that have all their approvals in place, that are approaching but have not yet reached final investment decision, because it jeopardizes the coalition of support.
Okay, so he's just going to go on to ramble some more. Vassy already knows she got him. This guy's done.
I want to work with Alberta on electrical intertie, on the TMX pipeline. I want to work with Scott Moe on Nutrien and potash and keeping that product in Canada so it doesn't get tariffed by Donald Trump on the way out of Washington State.
Tariffed by Donald Trump, yet you have no problem with Blackstone funding KSI Lissom's LNG? Stephen A. Schwartzman, a billionaire who funds Donald Trump? Like, come on, man. You can't make up this crap.
But man, it makes it hard to do that when I'm subject to a PR exercise out of Alberta for a project that doesn't exist.
This guy's tantrums are unbelievable.
The framework that we're seeing sort of come out in dribs and drabs here, that a commitment to carbon capture, like the Pathways project, and industrial carbon pricing for the long term in return for the removal of, say, the oil and gas emissions cap. And I don't know if it's the full repeal of the tanker ban or limited exemptions to the tanker ban, because that's what it seems to be. What are your thoughts when you see these sort of components playing out in this conversation?
I believe that is what it said in the document, or at least on the budget day. Of course, the CBC and all this other media didn't talk about the budget, but it does seem like it was specific exemptions on the tanker ban.
I mean, here, the idea that there could be exemptions or limited exemptions on a tanker ban. It's like explain to a vegetarian that, they'll still be a vegetarian if they eat a few steaks. The risk is to the long established lifestyle of coastal First Nations, but also $1.7 billion in economic activity up and down the coast. Right now, off the coast of Bella Bella, a freight barge is sinking. This is a community that has also seen a massive diesel spill from a tug and a barge that went down. These are some of the most dangerous waters in the world to transit. And so to load up heavy oil boats in this area puts at risk all of that economic activity. That's why the coastal First Nations hate it so much. That's why they're so opposed to the idea. And that's why it's so
That is not why they're opposed to the idea. You saw from that reporter's video, they don't like that this is being done by Steven Schwartzman, essentially funding this, American billionaire that funds Trump. If you guys are supposed to be the elbows up crew, why are you not pushing back against this? Then why are you not supporting First Nations in this? He's saying it for the wrong reasons here. This guy must have some investments in Blackstone or some of these companies in here. Something's in it for David Eby, because clearly he is dead set on only doing LNG. So he must be getting something from this, unless his activist brain is completely haywiring.
Foundational to their support for expansions of the Port of Prince Rupert and other work that we're doing to drive prosperity in the country.
Scott Moe was asked about the tanker ban, and he said it is fully within reason to think that there will be work that will be done on specific laneways and things. He seems to think that this is a reasonable move. I just wonder if you're not involved in these conversations, and it seems that they're trying to negotiate some sort of a framework that might compel a private sector component to come forward so that it is not, being led by any government. Does this set you up for a collision with Ottawa, with Alberta, with Saskatchewan, beyond sort of where we are at this moment in time?
It's hard to imagine. The only way that this happens is if the federal government is putting up tens of billions of dollars to pay for this using taxpayer dollars. There's a reason why the federal government can't sell the existing pipeline that taxpayers already own that cost $30 billion to build. Nobody wants to buy it. It's not worth it at that price. And the same would be true for the Northern Pipeline, which no company has come forward to say, which is like a remarkable thing. Let's think about this. You've got the Alberta government saying we're gonna bottom line all of this and back you up. The federal government says if you've got a private sector proponent in Alberta, we can do this. And yet not one company, not even one, is going to come forward and say, hey.
This guy's so preposterous. There's so many rules preventing it. Of course no company's going to come forward. Why is he lying to the public like this? There's a tanker ban and an emissions cap. Obviously no company's going to come forward and say, yeah, please, we're going to invest $20 billion in this. Of course they're not, because they can't make any money because there's no money to be made. Does he think we're dumb? What's wrong with this guy? He needs to be thrown out of office immediately.
If you guys build this, we'll buy it. Or, we're willing with these guarantees to do this. The reason is that this project is not real. And the frustration that I have is that we have real companies. LNG Canada Phase 2, it will be the largest private sector investment in Canadian history again. And that project being able to go forward is dependent on the goodwill and support of coastal First Nations who are directly being attacked by this project that just has no economic sense to it and is not being advanced by anyone other than a politician that frankly is in political trouble at home. And so when you put all these pieces together, it gets really challenging. And why Scott Moe is not focused on getting potash out of BC ports instead of Alberta's oil is beyond me. And I guess he can explain that to people in Saskatchewan. But for me in British Columbia, for our province, we're doing our part. We've got 4 times more major projects than any other province, tens of thousands of jobs, billions of dollars for federal coffers, jobs for people from across the country. And we're going to continue doing that work. We're not even really asking for help. We're just asking, please stay out of the way so we can do this for Canadians.
This guy's unbelievable. He's taking shots here, getting nasty. Daniel Smith and Scott Moe complaining about a tanker spill. And meanwhile, just last year out of Tofino, raw sewage was being pumped into the ocean. And just a few years ago, Victoria was pumping their raw sewage into the ocean. As I've shown in a previous video, Prince Rupert here, right off the coast, there's a big coal export terminal. He has no problem with rainwater washing all these toxic VOCs into the water. Not to mention this got sold off and it has part Indigenous ownership. Like David Eby is an absolute hypocrite.